and welcome to the Big Apple School podcast, the weekly English show where we speak about everything under the sun. The major goal of this show is to help you improve your English and, of course, learn something new. My name's Katya, I'm your host, and today with me...
I'm Гэри.
And...
I'm Benjamin.
Guys, we're doing our best to be as useful to you as possible, and we would like to get some feedback about it. Subscribe to our pages on Apple, Yandex, Google, VK, any platform where you listen to our podcast, and let us know what you think about our show. Rate and review our podcast, give us stars, leave some comments, ask questions. We always want to talk to you. And if you want, you can even send your ideas about our next episodes. It won't take much time or effort, right? But we would really appreciate it. All right. And now, straight to the topic, which is, quite an interesting one, which is conspiracy theories. So I think we should start with what we usually start with, which is defining it. So what exactly is a conspiracy theory? How do you guys understand that?
Well, a conspiracy theory is a theory whereby people believe that a higher power is conspiring to do something behind the scenes, hence the noun conspiracy. Would you agree with that, Гэri?
Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah, it's a kind of a story, right? It's like in ancient times they had myths to explain things, right? And the conspiracy theory is a kind of a myth for now, right? For our time, and everything you said was right. Yeah, it's somebody's plan. There's a plan. There's a reason, and there's a plan, and people got together and they're doing it. That's why things are bad.
But if in the past, the myths were about some kind of a power that just existed and not necessarily influenced the lives, directly, then I think conspiracy theory is a little bit different in that matter. So if people, not we necessarily, believe in, companies or maybe some power conspiring, that would mean that we believe in them conspiring against us.
Well, it depends what you mean by against people, because naturally every business wants to expand its profits and to become as successful as possible. I don't know if some people would consider that as being against people. Some people would say that's just capitalism. That's just how the world works. But,
and a real good, like the conspiracies that maybe I would think of first would be things that are maybe not by business, but by maybe other social forces. Maybe business would be one of those social groups that have an interest in doing a bad thing that would benefit them in other ways, maybe even on the level of like ideology, like what people are going to believe, right? What they're going to be convinced of, something like that.
Well, that's an interesting start, and a twist to the podcast. Now, why don't we give some kind of examples maybe of conspiracy theories? Like, what conspiracy theories have you heard of and can you think of now?
Well, the first one that comes to mind is the moon landing conspiracy theory. No one knows, no one can actually know for certain what happened, but a lot of people, especially in America, believed it happened, and a lot of other people don't believe it happened.
Can you give a little bit more detail about it to those who have not heard about this conspiracy theory? What exactly is it about?
Well, some people theorize that the Americans never actually landed on the moon, perhaps out of a desire to beat the Soviet Union back in the 60s. Some people use photographs taken on the moon as supposed or alleged evidence of this conspiracy theory.
I would say this sounds like a conspiracy that did not start in the United States, where I sat there as I would have been 1968, so I would have been, was I 14 years old? It seemed like I was a little younger, but I sat there and I watched the thing, right? Live. Right, live.
That's so cool.
That was the thing. It was awesome. It was amazing.
So cool.
And I also photographed it, which is
oh my goodness! So witnessing the history,
the screen, that is, which is useless. But anyway, that was the technology of the day. Is you put your camera on a tripod, take pictures of a television screen. But anyway, I watched it, and of course, we had absolutely no reason to doubt it. The fact of the matter is that there were hundreds of thousands of engineers. It was like some 5% of the United States government budget for those years. It was just a colossal amount of money that was spent. No need to explain it. That's what it took with that technology to go to the moon and walk around and come back. And, but maybe somewhere else it was, shall we say it was more, that was not a good story, a little too successful. Yeah,
So, but what do people who believe in this conspiracy theory, provide to, proof, quotation marks?
Well, there was a documentary, I think it was on the Discovery Channel, Mythbusters, I think that was the show, whereby people looked at certain shadows in the photographs and they...
There's always a reason.
Yeah, and so I think the photographs triggered a lot of people to...
Oh, it's like, how come there's a shadow if it's on a different...
I think the flag was moving. Wasn't the flag
Something like
moving? And there's no wind.
Oh, yeah.
On the moon.
How come
Yeah.
there's...
Yeah, what about that flag there, people? Anyway, like that. Real real knowledgeable stuff, But anyway.
If I'm not mistaken, so when this happened, so there was also some kind of a speech that was transmitted about, one step for
One small step
one
for
small
man.
step for man,
Right,
a big
yeah.
step
One
for
And
man.
he
leap for
botched
mankind.
the.
But was it? So I could
words.
not really understand whether he recorded that while being there or whether that was transmitted live. How exactly did that work?
No, it was live. I understood it to be live, and
Maybe
why not?
that.
Why not? It's not that far. I mean, it's 260,000 miles. So I mean, that's just a few times around the Earth. Radio. I mean, it's through space.
It's not that much. It might be not as much, today, but I guess at that time that was something extraordinary.
Well, I mean, they were used to when they were circling the moon. See, before they landed there, they orbited the moon. It just is an experiment, and they had live audio, and I don't know that they had and video. I mean, it's just not that far, even with the technology that they have. It's radio or whatever. I don't even know if it's radio wave, what part of the spectrum. But anyway,
Yeah, maybe it's
not
like a
that big
low
of a deal.
frequency radio wave. Because I think it's, if I'm correct, it's the lower frequency radio waves that travel really far.
Yeah, and so they could do it. I mean, it was a stretch then. I mean, what was amazing is the computers that they had then were just pathetic. I mean, I got more computer in my hand than they had doing that whole mission.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, can you imagine
I believe like a calculator was like the size of a room back in the 50s
Well,
or
yeah.
something. Yeah.
And I remember calculators when they came out. That's surprising. See, if you get old people on your podcasts, you get the historical. I mean, I remember when calculators were like, or calculators were they cost like $50, a simple calculator that did, the 4 functions, and that's it. So anyway.
I heard that one more argument that they have, to prove, or to support their theory is that why no one else has, made it to the moon since then. It's been more than 50 years now. So how come it only happened once?
Well, that's a brilliant. Yes. Yeah, it's like, well, I guess we just didn't do it. I mean, it's one of those things that you do, and once you've done it, you've done it. Mm-hmm. And it was like to prove a point. It was political partly, and you made the political point. Okay, we did it. Nobody died, right? At least not on that. And so, point proved. Next thing. I mean, it was about where it was.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like climbing Everest. I mean, are you gonna?
Yeah, right.
are you
Number
gonna above
2,
it?
right? Yeah,
Yeah, it's like,
we're number
on.
2. Yeah. I mean, the Soviet Union wouldn't be interested. Yeah, well, we got there too. What about us?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
just
so
forget
that was-
about it. Next thing, right?
all right, makes sense. Makes sense.
All right, so we debunked that one. Okay.
Well, I think whenever there is a, conspiracy theory, there is always some proof, to prove
Yeah,
it wrong.
something.
It's just whether
Yeah.
people would like to believe this.
Well, at the end of the day, every major scandal was at one point a theory, a conspiracy theory. So it's not wise to completely dismiss all conspiracy theories, but you should always take everything with a big, big grain of salt. Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, so the moon hoax. Any other conspiracy theories that you can think of that are widely spoken of?
Well, fairly widely spoken of. Maybe you've got another one.
The
but-
most the most interesting one would have to be the 9/11 one, because there's so much conflicting evidence everywhere. I'm not suggesting for a minute that it was a conspiracy, that the US government conspired to make it happen. However, there is a lot of really interesting evidence that's been provided. For instance, the temperature at which metal melts and the airplane which crashed into the building. Sure, it was a very hot explosion. However, the evidence that's provided is how could that explosion have provided enough heat to melt the trade center and make it bend? So that was like a really interesting wormhole to go down. I'm not for a minute suggesting that. I mean, I'm not a scientist in any way, shape, or form. I've never conducted such experiments.
Well, I am a hobby metallurgist, and therefore I can.
Just happened to be.
That's right. One of my interests is metallurgy. No, I'm joking, but I did see a very fine conspiracy video, which one of my many conspiracy-minded American friends showed me, and I have to say I was somewhat convinced. I don't know of what. The problem is who did it and why. It's like, okay, the U.S. government did it because, well,
a lot of people say the U.S. government.
No reason. Yeah.
Well, a lot of people say the U.S. government did it so then they would have an excuse to go into the Middle East. That's an alleged theory.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's really far-fetched. We say far-fetched means hard to believe. But yeah, that's the problem. Is I think that this particular video that I had the pleasure of watching was like blaming George Bush personally, like he was the bad guy in the video, and I don't think so. I mean, that's as soon as you try to say, well, who would do this and why are they doing it? It all breaks down. I mean, but some of the facts are so strange. I mean, just imagine those gigantic buildings just melting and falling down one after the other. I mean, it's just sometimes the reality is so hard to believe that there's gotta be some explanation with some human actors, and it can't be, these X number of crazy religious fanatics, it just can't be that. It's got to be something bigger than that. They don't have the brains to do that. They don't have the organizing power to do that. It can't be the explanation. So let's go big and say, well, it's the government. I mean,
it's always very easy to blame the government,
Sure. Well, of course, yeah.
Whatever happens.
right.
But why do you think people believe all these conspiracy theories?
Because they got nothing better to do. It's like playing a video game. Conspiracy theories are really fun to get into. They're fascinating to read about. But at the end of the day, are they going to improve your lives? Are they going to improve other people's lives? That's the question that has to be asked.
But the thing is that whenever some people who believe in these theories, they don't just read about that and forget about that the next day. They actually, start spreading it and being, annoying sometimes.
Yeah. Well, now the technology is there to spread it, right? Even after 9/11, the technology was sort of barely there to spread it effectively. YouTube, I don't even know, was YouTube even in existence?
I think it was since 2008.
Yeah, see, the YouTube wasn't even there, so the things that we would use now, that would be so mega viral that it would be unbelievable. And everybody would believe it, and 2/3 of the world would believe it, and all of that, and thankfully, at least we escaped that. But I think people want to know why. They want to have an explanation. We want to have a reason. And there's no better reason than a bunch of really powerful people with no names, and they get together somewhere in a dark forest in Switzerland, in a palace in Switzerland, and they plan the whole thing. And look, it happens.
Yeah, well, and people always want to have an explanation. Yeah, that's true.
The people don't like things that just happen, or that are happen in the wrong way.
Need to know why.
Yeah, and there's got to be it's good to have a good enemy, right? You have to have a good enemy. That's a part of conspiracy theories is usually there's an enemy involved often, so that helps.
You mentioned all the, media. And I think starting with several years ago, there was a term created, which was infodemic. Oh, actually, it got, really popular in 2020 when the pandemic started and people started to spread the information. And very often there was fake information, fake news. But since we have this media, so we have this infodemics when we can't really... stop it or control it.
Yeah, it's very bad now. Now it's actually destructive.
Well, at the end of the day, information is not a black and white thing, and even experts do at times get things wrong.
Yeah, but at least if they're really experts, they admit that. That's part of it.
Well, it depends. It totally depends. So, for instance, I can't remember what his name was. In the UK, one of the head scientists for the NHS, the National Health Service, he said there would be 2 million deaths in the UK. And I mean, of course, there's been a lot of horrible situations where families have lost elderly relatives, etc. But there's not been 2 million deaths in the UK. That was a ridiculous thing to say, and he never took that back.
Yeah, well, he should have taken that back. And there were a lot of mistakes early in the going because that was how, it was something new. It's a new, it's called the new COVID virus, right? Because it's new. And that's why you got to get a vaccine because you don't have one. You have to develop it. And so a lot of errors were made out of the mouths of top people, including the United States, but they backed it off. Of course, the press there, because you have one, at least somewhat of one, it made them sort of take it back, or walk it back means you correct yourself, basically. And, so there was some self-correction at least there, but if there wasn't, in that case, that's bad.
I think one more possible reason, at least, is fear and some kind of lack of stability. Because if we look at the times when there was a boom of conspiracy theories, well, in Russia, well, in the USSR at that time, the boom was in the 90s. So, there was no stability at all. And then we had so many, theories that you can give energy to water just putting it next to the TV when a certain program is on. And then I might be mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but I read that in the US, this boom was right after Vietnam and Watergate scandal. So the people did not, they stopped trusting the government and they were lost. They didn't know whether they could believe the government or whether they couldn't, what would happen the next day. And if they can't believe the government, maybe it is hiding something, and that gave rise to
the Watergate scandal definitely kicked things off,
And, so what, can you remind me what year that was?
It was the 70s.
It was 73.
So when that gave rise...
I was watching that, by the way, and taking pictures. I wasn't taking any pictures because who cares? But it was very interesting. It was during the summer of 73 and I was home from college.
Yeah.
And, but anyway,
But where did you learn about the Watergate scandal? Was it on the TV or was it in a magazine?
It was TV. No, it was TV. They televised the entire process.
Yeah.
And it was for real. That was when Congress was doing what Congress was supposed to do, as opposed to now, when it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. But they were actually, looking into it. It ended up the president got rid of the president.
Yeah. Was he the first impeachment or...
He wasn't impeached. He resigned. Yeah, he would have been. He would have been impeached and convicted, and so he just resigned. But
I think another possible reason might be lack of awareness. So if we think about, let's say, this infodemic, people are, they do not have the full knowledge about something, and sometimes, let's be fair, they're just too lazy to fact check.
Right.
So they just believe whatever they read or hear.
Yeah, it comes out of fear. Conspiracies, there's a big fear element to how they get hold because they hit people at some level. And I know it's ahead of the thing here, but historically, conspiracy theories have been really, really dangerous things. Like deadly things, not this is not internet jokes. It's not memes, funny things. It's not just bad information. It's people killing other people because of the conspiracy story, where it's these people's fault. I'm reading a book now. Happens just coincidence about the witch craze. There were witches.
Back in the, what is it, the 1700s?
Yes,
1600s,
1500s, 1600s, yeah. And I mean, this was a deadly, deadly, deadly thing. I mean, we're talking about thousands and thousands of people killed by a combination, unfortunately, of religious authorities and the government. And not to mention the conspiracy of supposed conspiracy of Jews, right? That's why I'm giving you a glance there as I touch the nerve. Right?
No,
don't let this electrical jolt to your nerve endings. Don't let this disturb.
It's all right. I'm not offended in any way.
Yeah,
shape,
no.
or form.
Well,
it's
I mean, you talk about that's where conspiracy theories go. Is they end up bad, and so it's not just for us. It's like, okay, well, what about this latest thing? And it's
people who believe to the extreme, who take it to the extreme, is always dangerous.
And somebody gets a hold of it. Somebody gets a hold and uses it. See, that's the problem. Is it like Hitler had the that story, that myth, conspiracy theory. It goes way back deep. It was over 1,000 years old at the point that Hitler just, as we would say, weaponized it. And the results are sad and, one of the darkest stories in the history of humanity come out of a conspiracy theory. And so that's why for us it's an internet joke or it's some bad information or whatever it is, but gracious, in different times, it can be life and death.
It can be, yeah. And I could, I think another possible reason, of course it all, varies and it depends on a certain situation, but I think that sometimes people believe in a conspiracy theory that resonates with them. And the more it does, the more they believe.
Yeah.
And the example that came to my mind is when people have someone, or if they are, let's say, sick with cancer, or they have someone who has cancer, they are more likely to believe, this conspiracy theories that the cure for cancer has been, it has been invented, but the big pharma, they don't want it to be, given. They don't want it to be available because, they make so much money. They make billions on, research and, all that, trying to find the cure. So this is another theory. And in general, people might not think about that much, but people who have been affected by it personally, they are, more likely to think about it and to believe anything just to, give excuse to why, they are not cured or somebody they love has not been cured. So, yeah. So situations differ.
Yeah. Well, fear, it's another kind of fear, right? There would be almost personal fear, right? And, let's take again, sorry, but Hitler, and that arose out of a culture that had really, and they lost the First World War. I mean, they went through hyperinflation. They lost their complete standing among other countries, pride, right? And it just, they were just decimated. And we need an explanation here. And so we have what we call scapegoat. And so into history,
Yeah, coming back to big pharma. So it's obviously the pharmaceutical industry is absolutely huge. It has so many components to the industry. So it's really easy to shake your fist at one big collective blob or one big collective big industry. And it's much better to look at things on an individual basis rather than a huge collective basis.
Of course. Well, again, this is the matter of fact checking and just, reading and getting information. Because if we look at 50, 60 years ago and the level of, medical care then and the level of medical care now, which is fascinating, So we can see that maybe this is a wrong theory. So
the thing is like coming back to the Watergate scandal, there were some things that are true and there's other things which are just not true. And that's the whole thing of conspiracy theories. There's no black and white.
I mean, there was, I mean, if you call it, I mean, that was just a crime, right? That never got to being a conspiracy theory. It began as a crime.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was a scandal. Yeah.
Yeah. And then became a scandal. But I mean, there was an actual crime or series of crimes. So it really wasn't a conspiracy as such, but it did break down trust in government, which was your point.
But
right?
let's be fair. What is the best lie? The best lie is the one that has a little bit of truth in it.
Yeah.
So once you see this bit of truth, you think,
Yeah, right. Well, it's like the gigantic lie, the big lie. That's the what they call that is if you're going to tell a lie, tell a big lie. And because people are going to believe that just as well, and it explains more things, and so why not, right? I mean, if you're going to lie, you don't care about the truth, then make it a big lie.
Yeah.
So why don't we go through top 5 conspiracy theories, the widely spoken one. We have actually talked about the secret pharma in a way. So what is your attitude to that personally? What do you think about?
I mean, personally, I avoid taking anything which is not natural. Obviously, I do occasionally take like an aspirin or not an aspirin, ibuprofen if I have a headache. But
come on, Ben, you're being reckless. Right? Don't do it.
It's not a good idea.
We want to keep you around here at the Big Apple Podcast Network.
Come on.
But it's not a good idea to take too many drugs, and that's not a good thing in general. And of course, the pharmaceutical industry is a business, and it does need to sell stuff. And it's not evil necessarily. It's the motivation behind the business is to help people.
If anybody could cure cancer, they would rush that thing out there as fast as they could do it, because they would take. I mean,
they'd make a lot of money out of it.
They would make it gigantic. So the whole idea that somebody would hide it so that they could not cure people and be more successful. I mean, just a little bit of thought process on that one.
I read some comments, doctors' comments on that, and they said, look, why do you think that we make more money, researching this and pretending to find a cure?
Yes.
If we had found it, if we had actually invented that, we would make even more money. Because if you think that's going to be cheap, you're wrong. It's always going to be expensive.
Sure. And just think about who gets the Nobel Prize, which is what those kind of guys, they don't care about money. Science people, they're not worried about the money. They're worried about the honor, the praise. And you cure cancer, and you're the man.
Yeah.
You're Galileo, you're Einstein, you're the whole bunch, because and somebody's not going to do that so that some big pharma company can make more money. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Galileo. Should we talk a bit more about Galileo?
Was there a conspiracy theory about it?
No.
Let's go back to the 16th century.
Wasn't Galileo the person who stipulated that the world's a globe? Was that Galileo? Or was that someone else?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another.
I should really be quick on this one, but I'm not quick on this one.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Well, now there's the flat Earth theory. That's a really cool conspiracy.
Yeah, no, there's a good one. Yeah.
That's
oh my God!
I
recently saw a pic from Facebook where somebody's like, the flat Earth theory, supporters are everywhere around the globe, and somebody's like, now repeat that again, but slow.
Right, yes, right.
Well, you're from Yakutia, so it's not too far from the edge of the world. So why don't you?
Yeah, I mean,
go and jump off it.
You've seen it. I mean, if there's an edge to it, it's somewhere around there, I'm sure. Not far from there, just a few miles north.
Oh my goodness! I have just realized. I hope people who see my tattoo will never think I'm a flat Earth supporter, because I have.
What's the tattoo? Go on.
It's Discworld, but it's based on Terry Pratchett's books. But basically, it looks like a flat Earth on the back of a turtle.
All right. Well,
so at the end of the
I'm not
well,
the flat
Katya,
Earth
who convinced you to put that tattoo on? Was that
don't be shy?
Somebody
you believe
from
in the flat
Facebook
Earth.
put you up to that? wow, here's the coolest, awesomest tattoo. And
you're going to be noticed and spoken about. You're going to get popular.
Put it on Instagram. Yeah, right.
Oh, God.
So what happens at the end of Russia? Do like reindeer fall off the side? And
I've never been there.
Heard. That's what I've heard over in the United States. Yeah. that's what we're hearing over there.
Well, a good reason to go and check,
Right.
Travel.
Right.
All right. So that was the first theory. The second one we have discussed, which is the moon conspiracy theory.
yeah.
I'm going to put another nomination in.
Ooh.
But you have to be older.
Yeah, go on.
And that's my department. Right. Yes. I'm there. How about John F. Kennedy? We had a president in the 1960s who was assassinated.
Who was,
right?
yeah.
That was really the start of the real, in the United States, I think, of the real serious assassination theories, which or conspiracy theories, is that the government story is, and they genuinely, supposedly had a thorough investigation, but that this one guy with one gun planned and did that whole thing, right? Shot the president as he's going by in an open automobile, right? And here's this maniac guy up in this tower, and he shoots the president. The president dies, and we're into the 1960s in the bad sense, right? Because the 1960s turned sort of difficult.
So, so people who support this theory, who do you think actually assassinated the president then?
Who do I believe? I mean, to be honest, I just don't know enough about the topic. I know one of the names of the shooters, was it something Ruby?
Well, Ruby, see, the other thing that happened is the guy that shot the president, they actually captured him. They caught him, right? And then that same day, the same day, some guy came up out of a crowd and shot the guy who shot the president. See? So you've got multiple actions. Right. I mean, it really is suspicious. It really, genuinely. And so I'm almost on board with that one, that there's something wrong with that one, truthfully.
I recently, just not long ago, was watching a TV show where they had a theory about that. It was a fantasy TV show, about people with superpowers and whatnot. And in there, somebody traveled back in time to, prevent the assassination. But then another person came, traveled through time to make it happen. And, and then there were some different alternative universes, to see the...
Oh, Katya, so complicated. Right. I'm too much of a simple man for that. But go ahead. Keep going.
No, that was it. So it's, okay. I mean, it's still...
So it's still around.
It's still around. So the TV show came out last year. So, and it's still, not in the media, but at least in books and TV shows.
Sure,
so it's still around.
It's still in American mind somewhere.
Yeah, so, we can say it's one of the top ones, definitely. I actually have, that was probably a mistake of mine, but when I was writing down the plan, I put that into the category of old and forgotten conspiracy theories.
Well,
and now I understand how wrong I was. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, speaking of shootings, there was another one. So John Lennon, when he was shot by, what was his name? Mark Chapman, something like that.
There was a conspiracy theory
about
that?
Was the theory that John Lennon wanted to, he was anti-government generally. Well, not anti-government, he was anti the military complex of the world.
Oh, yeah, he was all like...
Perhaps there's a theory that he was assassinated to prevent him spreading peace and love.
Peace and love. It's like, this is not the place for peace and love.
Yeah, that's right. This is no place for peace and love.
Yeah.
Let's assassinate that man. Yeah.
Oh, God.
That's how the government thinks.
The next...
Too much peace and love. Let's eliminate that force.
The next conspiracy theory that I want to share is the Coca-Cola conspiracy theory. So there was some rumors for quite a while that Coca-Cola put some kind of a drug, and some people even claim there was a little bit of cocaine to get people hooked up on their produce. And they explain it, saying that is why Coca-Cola has so many people who are, who cannot live without it, who drink, nearly a gallon every day. So they must have been putting something there.
Well, if you go to McDonald's and you look at the machines which make the Coca-Cola just a lot of white powder, so perhaps it could be.
Oh, wow, the powder theory. The powder theory. Yes. Powdered Coca-Cola. Well, no, actually, there's a historical thing to that, is that the original recipe, I mean, this is just historical fact, is the original recipe of Coca-Cola had cocaine in it. I mean, for real.
Oh, cool.
Look it up on the internet, people. Yes, it's real, actual facts. Of course, there came a point when, because, a lot of people were using cocaine,
apparently
Sherlock
dentists
Holmes author,
used to prescribe cocaine.
Yeah, it was illegal.
It was prescribed, yeah.
Yeah, it was illegal. It was the major pain, anesthetic. It was like medicine. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, it's addictive, and people became addicted to it. Mm-hmm. And at some point, people became aware of that, and so Coca-Cola just became what it is. But which means no cocaine, and just sugary and whatever else that people like. But maybe they already had the habit of drinking it with the cocaine, and now it's not quite as happy, right? Yes, it's good, not quite as good, right? Yeah, right, but still okay, right? Yes,
not quite as happy.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah.
Speaking of happy, I was reading this. It's kind of off topic, but I was reading this. The Lonely Planet guide. So I was reading the Lonely Planet Guide to Cambodia, and they have
right, as
and
you
they
do.
have
Yes,
they have
right,
these things
yes.
called happy pizzas in Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia, and they
Surprised me. What exactly is
well, they
this?
sprinkle cocaine on the pizza, apparently.
Oh wow!
So,
Okay, well, I bet that probably did a lot for tourism to Cambodia, right there.
They're
Man,
like,
as that-
the amount of tourists, is
As
falling
that goes
down.
out over the Big Apple podcast network, Cambodia is going to be overrun.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Where did this all start?
So
And they trace it-
once the borders open, what is the place that everyone's gonna go to? Cambodia.
Man, where's the pizza happiest? Right, man. This pizza here. This is a sad pizza.
I'm not sure if it was the Lonely Planet guide, but it was a guide. It was something
Right,
similar
yes,
like that.
right.
I don't want to get in trouble with the Lonely Planet guide if they
Yeah, they're gonna
if they-
sue
We're
you
obviously
for
listening. Right, yes,
for
right.
defamation. So sorry, Lonely Planet.
That's right. Big lawsuit against the Big Apple podcast. Yeah.
All right. The next conspiracy theory that I have is the one not about the world, but it is a Russian conspiracy theory, which you might have heard about because there have been some movies about it, which is called the Dyatlov Pass. So does it ring any bells?
The
Dyatlov Pass.
okay.
It doesn't, no.
So there have been some movies about it. So if you're curious, you can look it up later. So the Dyatlov conspiracy theory. So the thing is that in 1969, in January, there were 9 young hikers who, went hiking in the mountains in the Ural Mountains, and they wanted to climb the mountain, which people called the Dead Mountain.
Yeah.
So, quite a good start, right?
Sure.
So, and the thing is that they pitched their tents at the base of a small slope. So they went to sleep, but the thing is that they never made it to the next, waypoint. So, and they all were found. Well, first they disappeared, and there was a search group that started, looking for them. And it took nearly a month to find all 9 bodies, that were scattered amid the snow. And, and some of the hikers, they died half-dressed in just their socks and, this long underwear. Some had broken bones and cracked skulls. One woman was missing an eye. Somebody lost their tongue. So, and...
Have you ever lost your tongue?
So,
how do you lose your tongue?
Some
they
people,
did not have the tongue, yes.
Some
Okay,
people
sorry.
claim that it was because of the wildlife. So in the tent, it was half buried in the snow and then, slashed open from the inside. Well, that's what it seemed. So, and all 9 hikers, they were said to have died from hypothermia. And now there are a lot of theories about that. So, how come that 9 people died in such circumstances that their, bodies were found in such a state? So, and... there are some kind of criminal theories. There are some unbelievable theories, like it was a snowman, it was a yeti, or some kind of a creature. And the arguments that people provide to support their theory is that first, there was no sign of an avalanche when the rescuers found the bodies. So there was nothing like that. The second argument that they provide is that there's, that the hikers, they left their tent in the midnight, like the middle of the night. So, and even if the avalanche had happened, it would have happened at a different time because, they estimated the risks, what time of the day and what kind of a temperature you need. So, and the third one is that even if it was an avalanche, so they say that the injuries that the hikers had sustained, they had injuries and chest injuries. And this is not what an avalanche can cause.
Well, I mean, if it was an avalanche, they would all just be under snow. No, I mean, they would all just be buried and they would have to dig them out. Isn't that what an avalanche is?
I mean, there were a lot of details about, what kind of an angle, the tent was at, where exactly at what part of the slope they were at. So those were technical details that I do not really understand or remember, if I'm honest. But yeah, so there were so many theories, how they could have started to escape. And if they cut the tent from the inside, so why? Was it before the avalanche? Was it what happened? Was it after? Was it really some kind of a wild animal?
This kind of reminds me of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So in America, I think it's America. In America, there's this huge, and there's still people who are looking for Bigfoot. So for those of you who are not familiar with Bigfoot, it's this alleged mystical creature which is big and allegedly really hairy and ape-like and and like a big bear, and people have allegedly found huge footprints in the forest. I can't remember which part of America it is.
Well,
this reminds me of Bigfoot and Loch Ness, of course, in Scotland.
Right. Yes.
Which is the big.
Have you seen this picture or people saying like why we have now such cool phones that so you can zoom in and see little hair somewhere, but when people take pictures of Yeti or Loch Ness, it's
very
always
poor
so
quality. Astoundingly poor quality. Right. That's right. That's some world's worst photographs. Yes.
So and this is one more. So the Dyatlov Pass. It was named.
That's a good one. I mean, that's got everything. Yeah, I mean, as far
everything
as,
you need for a good conspiracy theory or an unsolved mystery.
Yeah.
So it was named after one of the hikers, Dyatlov. And again, there are some movies. If I'm not mistaken, there might be a book about it as well.
Yeah.
And it's still widely discussed up to this point. All right. And we can't but mention the biggest conspiracy theory, which is the secret government.
Secret
What,
government.
the Illuminati? Is that what
the
you mean?
Illuminati.
Yeah.
Now
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many versions of the secret government. What exactly that can be? The billionaires controlling the universe, like reptiloids, name it.
Well, the queen is apparently a lizard or something. Or a reptile,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Why not? Why not have the queen be a lizard? I mean, if you're already there, just go the extra 100 miles and just.
Well, how come that she, could make it to what, 96 she turned?
She's old. She's going strong.
It's that reptilian nature, right? I mean, crocodiles live to be, I don't know how old, 150 years old.
So what versions of this theory have you heard of? The secret government?
Well, Ben, you've got the Illuminati going. You're there. Right?
I mean, I to be honest, I don't know what to believe. I mean,
well, of course.
I sense that Ben is maybe he's there. He's there.
I don't want to give you the details, but
Yes.
I don't think there's like a government per se. I just think everyone has their own interests at heart, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a good thing, and people will do whatever it takes to make sure that their interests are taken care of. And some people who have made billions of dollars probably want to keep those billions of dollars and don't want to lose it, and will probably do some things that are slightly nasty too. I'm not saying that billionaires are all nasty people, not at all. I'm sure
the billionaires who listen to this podcast will be glad to hear you.
Yeah, sure they are.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Please send us a donation.
Our biggest fans.
We're happy.
That's right.
Didn't know.
If you like this podcast, you know what to do.
Yeah.
Donate and support.
Yeah.
So what is a government at the end of the day? How would you define government?
Ben says, looking at me.
How would you define government?
Well, government is what? It's a human organization that people consent. Well, it depends. It's right, yes, or don't consent, and it's a human organization that's by which people govern themselves. Part of the people govern the rest of the people.
Yeah, I mean,
how's that for?
It's just an overarching. I just see it as like a
poor
structure,
quality definition.
The framework of a given success.
Put it in the outline. If you want to have something brilliant, you got to put it in the outline. You look at me and say, Gary, what is government? You'll get an answer like the one I just gave.
Yeah, I mean, well,
that's not my fault. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
But it all comes down to how one would define a government. Would you define it as something that you elect? Would you define it as something which has control over you? No. It all depends how you would define government.
Well, historically, right, it's elected governments are few. It's mostly just things you're born into under the government and the order of things that you're born under, and you just live with that. And now there is some democracy over the world, and so some element is people choose their masters, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, some people do. I mean, maybe not in North Korea. But
Right. Well, maybe not just in North Korea, but anyway, yeah. Right, yes.
All right.
So don't have to travel far, but no comment. Yes.
Better be safe here, yeah.
Yeah, right.
I don't necessarily believe in the Illuminati, which is like a group of billionaires or overlords who want to control everything. But I don't rule out that people look after their own interests. I mean, everyone does. And
it
sounds natural.
Maybe by the time that you put people that are really outrageously wealthy and powerful together, maybe their interests are so much the same that they end up kind of going in the same direction, right? Because it's beneficial to them. Or you can imagine that, right? You can imagine that, even without actually having a meeting in Switzerland in a palace in the woods and planning it all out. It just is going to happen by people seeking their own benefit, right?
Yeah.
All right. Now, something unexpected maybe to you and to our listeners, but one of the conspiracy theories that we've mentioned is a fake one. So I dare you guess which one that was. So you can leave your thoughts in the comments after listening. So, yeah. Do you have any guesses which one was fake? I'm not going to tell you the answer, but...
You mean one of the things we were talking about was fake?
Yeah.
I'm disappointed. I'm surprised.
This podcast is nothing but a lie.
That's right. I already told you that. I wanted to walk out earlier.
No, he didn't. Don't believe him.
I didn't. No, they blocked the door. They wouldn't let me do it. But not which. I mean, really?
Yeah.
All right. I'll look in the comments.
All right.
Maybe the moon landing, I guess.
Oh, I mean, which was a fake? Well, that was a fake. Yeah, I mean, well, that was not. Or I mean, the fact. I mean, the fact.
No, it was. I mean, which conspiracy theory does not exist in general and not, discussed that widely, maybe.
And there was.
Well,
one,
I leave
there
you.
Was
I
one
leave
like
you.
That?
To it.
Well, you must have brought it up because we are innocent and we wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I would have.
Well,
all right, and we have mentioned it earlier. The amount of some theories that appear in the time of crisis or difficult situations. So why don't we talk about conspiracy theories that appeared in 2020 when we started to have COVID? So what coronavirus conspiracy theories have you heard of?
I have not heard of any, just because I ignore
Oh, how
them.
lucky
I
you
ignore
are.
them.
Conspiracy theories.
I ignore them. I know they exist, but I've ignored them.
To be honest,
Which was a good decision. I might
Yeah,
add.
definitely.
I don't regret
definitely.
that. I don't feel like I missed that.
there's so much conflicting information. I don't know what's a theory and what's not.
Well, one of the theories, I think one of the biggest theories is that now that we have vaccination, started, some people think that it's all just a way of chipping people in order to control them, and that Bill Gates is all behind that. They want to control it, which is in itself, is
But when people say something's absolutely true or absolutely not true, how can you actually know? How can you prove anything? That's the underlying
Okay,
question.
Ben,
yeah.
now you're doing it again.
I mean, I don't.
you're threading on the ice here.
And now he also started to look at me
Yeah.
again, and that's.
I just go to work. I just go to work.
Yeah.
I don't really look into these things because of I
Yeah.
can't be bothered, to be honest. But at the end of the day, how do you actually know that something's true or not?
Fact check.
Yeah, I
Look at
think
different sources.
that's one of the
Reliable.
problems. Here's a real problem, which has arisen, is exactly in your question, right? Is that once, dare I say, our illustrious former president, Donald Trump, really did a bad thing by multiplying people's distrust of the truth. Like it can't be found.
But what is
And-
the truth?
Well, I mean, the truth is, like in the case of the virus, right, and the vaccines, I think that, I mean, where there's some grounds for, how did it start? Now, there's a problem,
Well,
right?
Sir Isaac
Yeah.
Newton, he would prove things by showing that there was reproducible evidence. So if something can be reproduced over and over and over again, then that's the truth. But if something is just forecasted, then that's not necessarily the truth.
Right. Well, and that's where, if we're talking about history, right, you cannot repeat history except in movies, like the movie you went, like that movie. Okay, only in your fantasies, right? So, in that sense, but in fact, there are people who are reporting actual facts of things, and I believe that basically the information is pretty good. I don't trust everything either, even from good sources.
Exactly.
but-
It's never black and white. Yeah.
Well, it's, it is actually black and white, but getting to the black and white of it is the problem, right? It's just, there is an actual truth. I mean, like the virus, how did the virus start? Well, it started some way, only one way, right? And, about China and some laboratory in China, that whole story.
Yeah. And no one can actually prove this because unless you actually
Right,
go
yeah.
to the lab and you have like a microscope, how are you going to know that these things are true or not?
And they're,
Yeah.
because of the Chinese government, and I apologize to our Chinese listeners, right? Yes. But that their interest is in not having it be in any way connected to anything that they did, except for trying to contain it after it happened. So, but I think once you get beyond that the information we have about how it spread and the vaccine process is not a conspiracy to do anything except try to cope with something that's very destructive. I think that's all it is. And
Well, if you look at the polio virus, that there's reproducible evidence that the vaccination for that works because there hasn't been polio in
right, and
in the States for a long time.
There
So-
is with this also with the vaccine. Yeah, it's just that they
Well,
have to.
that's the thing is how can people know for certain if the
Well,
amount of time is not?
Yeah, well,
elapsed?
normally you would do this over a course of like 5 years or something.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And then
yeah.
you would know because you would have tested a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
But because a whole lot of people are dying all the time, you can't wait for that. And so
Yeah.
that's the problem. But there are certain norms and certain procedures that can be accelerated. You can do them faster and get at least what's supposed to be anyway, a
Yeah.
dependable result. But it's not a certain thing until
Yeah.
5 years down the line, right? Then you know. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I just have the instinct that we're not being microchipped. I don't think that we are, but you can't actually prove that. That's the funny thing.
Right, but
So
I don't.
It's an
yeah.
instinct at the end of the day, and I
Yeah, but
hope it's not true. But
Right. Well, I hope
how
not
can you
too.
actually
But
know? Yeah.
well, but the problem with that thing of, but we can't really know for sure, is there's a lot of things we can't really know for sure. But there's things that we can be pretty sure about, and that has always been good enough.
Yeah.
And it's not like all of a sudden in 2020, it's not good enough anymore. It's good enough. It's good enough to go and vaccinate the world, or try to, it's good enough. And good enough sometimes just has to be good enough, right? But the whole problem with truth, that's really a problem. And, that's more of a problem. It's kind of a meta problem, right? It's a problem on a different level. And
there's only so many things that we can achieve in our daily lives, and you can't, there's so many theories out there, and people can't go prove and disprove every single theory.
Right.
So it's better to just concentrate on the things that are in front of you rather than trying to prove.
I thought you were going to say it's better to just concentrate on one theory to prove or disprove.
Well, maybe you should. Yeah, maybe that could be your hobby.
Pick a theory and stay with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is one of the theories connected with the COVID. Have you heard about the 5G theory, which is closely connected?
Yeah, that's a British special there.
British special.
We'll let Ben talk about that one.
You know David Icke? Are any of you familiar with David Icke?
I've heard that he's associated with that.
Yeah, he's associated with it. So he's a famous conspiracy theorist, and he's.
Why do you know a name of a famous conspiracy theorist?
He's famous. If you go on YouTube, he's everywhere. He's famous.
Why am I asking?
Yeah,
He's very eloquent, but there's times when you think, is this true? Is this not true?
Well, if he's a famous conspiracy theorist, just think it's probably not true.
Well, for instance,
I'll recommend it.
He has supported the Queen as a reptile theory, and I can't really get get on board with that.
But Ben, we're not really sure, right?
Well, it's true. How can you actually be sure? That's
5G. Don't get distracted. 5G.
Well, let's go to the reptile, the Queen reptile theory.
Well,
that's the problem.
I hope she's not a reptile.
Right. Well, that's your patriotic streak there. You're just
God save the Queen. I hope she's not a reptile. I don't think she is.
Well, that's where we've gotten.
I haven't touched the Queen's face. I haven't.
The highlight of this podcast is that Ben hopes the Queen is not a reptile.
Right.
Ben, 5G.
5G.
Concentrate, Ben.
So radio waves.
Focus.
So what is the theory about that? So why do people burn 5G towers throughout the world?
I've heard that perhaps the radio waves just cause disturbances in people's heads and apparently makes people crazy.
It's deeper than that, because it got more common. So this theory since the COVID started. So this conspiracy theorists they say that the 5G towers. Well, that people who die of COVID actually don't die of COVID, and they get COVID in the first place because of hypoxemia, the lack of oxygen in the body, which is caused by the 5G radiation that, blocks something in the body, so you don't get enough oxygen.
Wow, that's preposterous. I'll give that one a 5 on my preposterous
5G.
We'll give that 5G.
The argument.
I'll give that 6G on that one. Yeah, that one's even 6G.
So the argument that people who support this theory provide is that Wuhan in China, where the COVID started, was one of the first cities in the world where in 2019 they tested the 5G towers and 5G nets.
Okay.
And then some people even say that...
Solid. Yeah, I like that. Solid evidence. Yeah.
They even say that, the COVID had predecessors. So when there was an pandemic of SARS in 2003, it was 3G. Then there was a flu swine in 2009.
Awesome.
You can guess it was swine flu.
Yeah.
And then 9G
So swine flu was in 2009 when there was 4G towers and stuff.
I remember that at school. That was a huge thing.
Oh, wow.
They even say, it's a little bit, as you say, far-fetched, but they say when there was a Spanish flu pandemic in 1918, what was the time?
Radio.
The radio.
Oh, wow. The light's going on. I believe. Wow, Ben and Katya, this whole thing convinced me I mean, that couldn't possibly just be a coincidence.
Right?
No
It couldn't
way.
be.
Right? That couldn't just sort of cherry pick things that happen to happen at the. No, that's solid. I mean, that's science there, buddy. We're not talking about baloney that we're blowing out of some orifice. That's reality there, buddy.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you, podcast. Learn something.
Well, remember what I said at the beginning? The major goal of this podcast is to help you improve your English and learn something new. I wasn't lying.
That's right. That's right. We're accomplishing every purpose.
Yep.
To the max.
Exactly. So, and can you think of any conspiracy theories that turned out to be true?
I'm going to look at Ben on this. He's got our gullibility award for the day.
Trying to think what came true.
He's scratching his head. He's thinking. I'm just describing. He's going deep into his.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think. So, I mean, some scandals came true.
And as you said, some of the scandals were at first, some theories.
Yeah.
So
It's not really a conspiracy theory, but Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton, that wasn't a conspiracy. And he said, no, I never had an affair. I never had an affair.
That's
and
not a
he's
conspiracy.
Yeah,
that's
It's not a conspiracy theory.
I don't know if
But how can you trust people high up if...
Well, but
they lied
that's
to you
not
in
the
such a
same.
big way.
Okay. Yeah, I mean the problem with trusting the government, I'll go with that.
Bill Clinton was a really cool person. Like he was a really fun person, and then
right.
And then,
right.
And then he just lied
it just
to everyone.
kind of got carried away with it.
Trying to think.
I would anyway.
I don't know.
But that's interesting, isn't it? That if you think about it, that's a good question, right? Is if there were, like a lot of conspiracy theories, so much so that, okay, we should really pay attention to whatever our conspiracy theories are now in a way that that probably that could be true.
Well, what about, actually, I've got one. So
Okay.
maybe Jeffrey Epstein. That whole.
You have to elaborate on that for me and some of the listeners.
This is another equivalent of, this is out of the Bill Clinton.
I mean,
and
it
Monica
hasn't come
Lewinsky
true,
story.
but why was he killed in prison? I mean, in a really secure prison. That's
Then
a very,
you have to tell me who that is and what happened.
Jeffrey Epstein. He was
get ready. That's another.
Well, he's a very famous billionaire, a very famous billionaire in New York who was a pedophile, like a really big one, and it was all over the news. I mean, a lot of people have heard of Jeffrey Epstein, and I'm not gonna lie, that was a really fishy case. It's a huge story. I can't tell the whole story here, but there's a whole Netflix series about it. It's fascinating. It's really fishy as to why he was killed. Why was this guy killed in a maximum or a really secure prison in Manhattan? And that definitely opens some questions. I mean, it's not going to affect my daily life. I'm not going to.
Please don't let that affect your daily life.
Yeah, it's just not. But,
I don't want that for you. I want good things for you.
What happened with Jeffrey Epstein was horrible, and it definitely does need to be explored.
Yeah, I think that if you take conspiracies down to that micro of a thing.
He was connected with a lot of famous people.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Yeah, there are probably a lot of things that on that scale.
Yeah,
it's kind of like. It's sort of a small scale.
Yeah.
Right?
It does make you think, what were all these people doing? Well, why were they all associating with this guy and hanging out with weird people like Prince Andrew? Like, why was he hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein? Why was he photographed with all these young girls? It's really weird.
Well, because that was what he was doing, and everyone else was enabling him to do that, and including high up people. And, I mean, it's
whatever.
It's a very evil.
Yeah, it's evil. It's scary, and I mean, it's not. I mean, I'm not going to dedicate my life to looking into it. I'm here to teach English and here to.
Right. Okay, Ben. I think you've got your priorities straight. That's
good.
So
good.
Definitely,
keep
Jeffrey
it like
Epstein. If you want to learn some more English, go on the Netflix series. It's a fascinating series.
I don't know if I can say that it was a conspiracy theory, proved right or not. I mean, not about. Jeffrey Epstein, he said, but there was a situation when there was a theory that some of the government data was stolen or something like that, and it turned out that there was this, and there is Scientology, I think, is
Yes.
Scientology. Is it a church of Scientology? Or I do not know how exactly
Yeah,
to
it's
call
called
that.
the Church of Scientology.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not.
So,
a
and the
church,
thing is
but-
that in the 1970s, there were some, rumors going around that they are trying to get rid of the data about them. And it turned out to be true that there were more than 5,000 people who were involved, who were, who were stealing data and erasing data about the church, about people, connected with it in more than 30 countries. So in some government institutions, in FBI, in consulates and embassies. So yeah, but this is the only one that I can think of. And it was called, apparently, the Operation Snow White.
Wow. Okay.
So
Oh, I don't really know this.
Yeah,
much about this,
I
yeah.
had not really heard that, but Scientology it's a bad bunch. It's a bad.
I remember being told this story, and later I had to read about this after I saw this beautiful building in Boston when walking with a friend who's a local, and I was like, "What is it?" She's like, "A Scientology church." I'm like, "A what?
Oh, wow.
Is it like about science?" She's like, "Oh, listen." So I had a bit of a mini lecture about it. That's the only reason why I have heard about that.
So a lot of people who get involved with Scientology, they all have good intentions. I don't think Scientologists go into Scientology because they're evil people. They're just lost and they're broken and they want answers to things, and they become disillusioned with the way things are, so they turn to Scientology. I don't think that Scientologists as people are bad people, but I don't
I
like
don't
what the
think so either,
organization does. Yeah.
But they kind of they are the kind of an organization that uses psychology on their own people to capture them.
Yeah.
And it's very it's
creepy.
pretty-
Yeah, it's creepy.
It's
Yeah.
creepy. It's
Yeah.
sinister. It's actually sinister.
Yeah.
We say sinister.
Because it's a business as well. Almost.
Yeah, it's a gigantic business,
Yeah.
and it's a warped kind of
Because
theory.
I'm sure they have some nice things to offer Scientologists. Otherwise, people would never join it in the first place. So they give people a sense of structure.
They promise you.
Yeah.
They promise you certain benefits, right?
Yeah.
It'll.
And perhaps at the beginning, I've never done it before, but I've never been a Scientologist or anything. But perhaps people must feel good at the start, or else they would never end up spending millions of dollars of their own hard-earned cash on it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, wow, that was fun and
Yeah, it
so
was-
much new information, so much to look into, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Ooh, wow. Okay, so that was the Big Apple School podcast, and today we discussed numerous conspiracy theories, what exactly a conspiracy theory is, and which ones we have heard of. We tried to, prove some of them wrong, or, discuss the arguments that the supporters of these theories provide. And we discuss why people believe in these theories. So, well, thank you for listening. And remember, if you struggle to understand our conversation, you're always welcome to our website, which is bigappleschool.com/podcast. You can find full scripts of each episode there, so you can listen and read, and that'll help you a lot, I hope. So also, if you want to get more content which will help you learn English, you can follow us on social media, basically any social media you can think of, Instagram, VK, Telegram, YouTube, yeah. So just search our name, which is, again, Big Apple School. So, and that was Katja, and my guests for today were
Gary.
and
Benjamin.
stay tuned, and we'll see you around.